this timeline is crazy, man.
I know. So many things coming at one time.
Yeah, but so there's still, I mean, it's crazy too because there's still more happening in court. Like, I mean, everything is still active even though we're not hearing about it as much anymore. And the people may be fatigued like we talked about prior to.
The whispers began as barely audible murmurs, a ripple of unease that swirled around the Combs family mansion like a specter refusing to be ignored. For months, tension had simmered beneath the surface, but when Diddy's twin daughters packed their belongings and left the home they once shared with their father, a home that had been the epitome of luxury and privilege, the simmer turned into a full boil. Their destination? Kimora Lee Simmons' residence, a sanctuary far removed from the chaos that had engulfed the Combs family. The move wasn't just a teenage rebellion or a fleeting act of defiance. No, this was a line in the sand, a bold declaration that they wanted no part of the world their father had built. And lurking behind their decision was something far more sinister than anyone could have predicted. A set of allegations so shocking, so damning, that they threatened to rip apart not just a family, but an empire.
Well, Kim Porter, you know, that is Diddy's ex, who's also the mother of his 3 of his children.
Right.
Has detailed the alleged abuse that she suffered at his hands.
Oh, no.
And this is all in a memoir.
The twins, now 17, had lived under the shadow of their mother Kim Porter's tragic passing for years. Kim had been the glue holding their fractured family together, the one person who could soften the edges of Diddy's domineering personality. But in the years since her untimely departure, cracks in the family's facade had widened into deep chasms. The girls had grown increasingly distant, retreating into themselves, while their father seemed more preoccupied with maintaining his public image than addressing the emotional fallout at home. It wasn't just grief that hung over the family, it was suspicion. Whispers of betrayal and dark secrets began to circulate, and when new evidence surfaced suggesting foul play in Kim's passing, those whispers grew into an unavoidable roar. The twins were said to be devastated by what they had discovered. According to insiders, they had long harbored doubts about the official narrative surrounding their mother's passing, but it wasn't until recently that they were confronted with details that felt impossible to ignore. Close family friends began sharing stories, hints that there was more to Kim's tragic story than met the eye. And then there were the unsettling rumors that had been swirling for years about Diddy's controlling behavior, his alleged paranoia, and the lengths he would go to in order to maintain control over those closest to him. For the twins, the puzzle pieces were starting to fall into place, and the picture they painted was chilling.
You know what I'm saying? Just with this Cassie thing, I didn't know her, but I knew somebody like her, and that was Kim Porter. I didn't know Cassie, but I knew somebody who was going through the same thing she was going through, and that was Kim Porter.
Kimora Lee Simmons, a close confidant of Kim Porter and a maternal figure to the twins, reportedly played a pivotal role in their decision to leave. Kimora had always been a steady presence in their lives, someone who had witnessed firsthand the ups and downs of Kim and Diddy's tumultuous relationship. When the twins confided in her about their suspicions, she didn't dismiss their concerns. Instead, she offered them a way out, a place to stay, a safe space to process their emotions, away from the suffocating atmosphere of the Combs household. It was a move that sent shockwaves through their family, but for the twins, it was an act of self-preservation. What emerged next was a portrait of a father whose need for control went far beyond the boundaries of what anyone would consider normal. Diddy's behavior, as described by those who knew him, painted a picture of a man consumed by power and paranoia. He was known for micromanaging every aspect of his life, from his business ventures to the personal lives of those around him. But it was his relationship with Kim Porter that raised the most questions. Insiders recounted stories of an overbearing partner who allegedly kept tabs on Kim's every move, going so far as to hire private investigators to follow her during their periods of separation. Kim's former lawyer had even described Diddy as obsessed with her, a man who couldn't bear the thought of losing control over someone he considered his.
Do I think every man possibly is capable. I think he's very capable of doing it. It's in his character. That's who he is. That's what comes with power. That's what comes with arrogance. That's what comes with, what makes him, power. That's just the selfishness to make you be like that.
And yet, it wasn't just his controlling tendencies that raised red flags. There were whispers of physical altercations, moments of violence that were quietly swept under the rug, dismissed as the price of living in the spotlight. One particularly harrowing story involved a public argument between Diddy and Kim, that escalated to the point of physicality. Witnesses claimed that Diddy's response was to brush it off, insisting that it was just a passionate moment between two people who loved each other. But for those who saw the bruises and the emotional toll it took on Kim, it was clear that this was no ordinary relationship. As the twins delved deeper into their mother's past, they began to uncover details that had been carefully concealed. There was the story of the apartment Diddy had put Kim in during one of their breakups, a place that was reportedly infested with rats and so decrepit that it seemed almost like a punishment. Kim had confided in friends that it was a stark contrast to the life she had grown accustomed to, a deliberate move by Diddy to remind her of what she was losing by leaving him. And then there were the accounts of Diddy's erratic behavior, his alleged mood swings, and the way he seemed to lash out at those closest to him whenever he felt his control slipping.
Because Kim had took the cork, you know where you open up wine? The corkscrew. She took the corkscrew and caught him on his wrist defending himself. And he almost, I know he tore some ligament, but he almost hit an artery. I came close to the artery or either scratched it or cut it a little bit because he just kept bleeding.
The twins, once shielded from the darker aspects of their parents' relationship, were now grappling with the reality of who their father might truly be. And yet, as they tried to make sense of it all, they found themselves at odds with the rest of their family. According to insiders, the twins felt betrayed, not just by their father, but by their grandmother and brothers as well. The focus within the family, they claimed, seemed to be less about seeking justice for Kim and more about securing their share of Diddy's wealth. It was a bitter pill to swallow and one that only deepened the divide between the twins and the rest of their relatives. Kimura, ever the protective figure, reportedly encouraged the twins to take a stand. She reminded them of their mother's strength, her unwavering determination to protect her children at all costs. And so, the twins made a decision that would forever alter the trajectory of their lives. They left behind the gilded cage of their father's home and stepped into the unknown, determined to uncover the truth about what had happened to their mother. It was a move that sent shockwaves through their inner circle, but for the twins, it was a necessary step toward reclaiming their narrative.
The thing that happened is Tupac's family is reportedly deciding to investigate the rumors that Diddy was involved in Tupac's.
As the twins settled into their new life with Kimura, the ripple effects of their departure began to spread. Questions swirled about what this meant for Diddy's public image, his empire, and his legacy. For years, he had carefully cultivated a persona of success and philanthropy, a man who had risen from humble beginnings to become a music mogul and cultural icon. But now, that image was cracking under the weight of allegations that painted him as something far darker. And as the twins prepared to take their next steps, one thing became abundantly clear. The story was far from over. And just as the twins were finding their footing in the wake of their departure, the cracks in the facade of Diddy's carefully curated empire began to deepen. What had once been whispers confined to private conversations and obscure corners of the internet were now echoes amplified by insider leaks, mounting lawsuits, and a growing wave of celebrity silence. The story wasn't just about a fractured family anymore. It was unraveling into something far bigger, with stakes that reached from the gilded penthouses of Manhattan to the darkest corridors of the music industry. And at the center of it all was a man who, for decades, had seemed untouchable. But if there's one lesson the public has learned from the fall of countless icons before him, it's this: the higher the pedestal, the harder the crash.
This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly.
The legal case against Diddy, which once seemed airtight and poised to serve as the ultimate reckoning, was suddenly showing signs of strain. Insiders close to the investigation began hinting at procedural errors, mishandled evidence, and witnesses who were either recanting their statements or mysteriously vanishing from the public eye. WAC 100, never one to shy away from controversy, added fuel to the fire with claims that the case had been mismanaged from the start. According to WAC, the prosecution's once solid narrative was starting to unravel under the weight of its own inconsistencies. Whether it was because of pressure from Diddy's high-powered legal team or sheer incompetence on the part of investigators, one thing was becoming increasingly clear: the road to justice was going to be far more complicated than anyone had anticipated.
If that's all they got, if that, like for example with Diddy, if that's all they got, he might actually walk free. And in fact, I heard he's getting bail. I'm not 100% sure of this, but I know someone that knows someone in the feds that told him that he's getting bail.
The only thing about Diddy thing that has me scratching my head, and you know I don't doubt nothing they know how to do, is I've never seen a one-man RICO.
WAC 100 didn't mince words when he dropped his latest bombshell on social media. According to him, some key witnesses who were initially cooperating with the investigation had mysteriously gone silent. He even hinted that a few of them might have been incentivized to change their stories or withdraw entirely. "The streets are talking," Wax said in a cryptic post that sent fans and industry insiders into a frenzy. He claimed that Diddy's team was deploying every resource at their disposal to dismantle the case before it even reached trial.
I don't know if they charged him wrong. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if they should have just charged him directly with whatever the immediate charge was, but he's under a RICO. You know what I'm saying? Like when you look at Big U's thing, it's like 7 or 8 other people.
But Wax allegations didn't stop there. He suggested that some of the very agents involved in the investigation had been compromised, hinting at a level of corruption that could impact the case's viability. "You think this is just about one man? Nah, this is a system protecting itself," he said during a recent podcast appearance. While he didn't provide concrete evidence, his tone and choice of words implied that this wasn't just wild conjecture. It was the kind of claim that, if true, could shatter public trust in the institutions tasked with holding powerful figures accountable. And if Wax sources were to be believed, the rot went much deeper than anyone had anticipated. Meanwhile, unnamed insiders close to the case backed up some of Wax's claims, albeit more cautiously. One source revealed that certain pieces of evidence had inexplicably gone missing during the collection process, including key documents and recordings that were once considered critical to building the case against Diddy. "It's almost like someone wants this to fall apart before it even gets started," the source said. The suggestion that important evidence could simply vanish without explanation added another layer of intrigue to an already convoluted situation. It wasn't just the witnesses disappearing, it was the very foundation of the case itself.
Wait a minute, say that again. Say that again, back up. You're saying that there's tapes and they're being shopped?
Yes, there have been people already shopping.
We've heard about the tapes, but
yes.
The shopping thing is
yes, there already have been tapes leaking around Hollywood, being shopped around to individuals in Hollywood. But one particular person contacted me to shop a particular video they were in possession of.
Adding fuel to the fire, Wack claimed that some of Diddy's associates were actively working behind the scenes to flip the narrative. He alleged that smear campaigns were being orchestrated against accusers and informants, with planted stories designed to discredit their credibility. This tactic wasn't new in high-profile cases, but the speed and precision with which it was reportedly happening raised eyebrows. "They're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers," Wack said, suggesting that the public might never get the full story if these power plays continued unchecked. The implication was clear. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a war of perception, and Diddy's team seemed determined to win at all costs. But Diddy's troubles didn't end with the courtroom. If anything, the legal drama was just the tip of the iceberg. Behind the scenes, his once loyal circle of celebrity friends was beginning to fracture. Some, like Jay-Z, had reportedly distanced themselves from the chaos, opting for strategic silence over public displays of support. Others, like Kimora Lee Simmons, had made their stance abundantly clear by aligning themselves with the twins and by extension against Diddy. The optics were damning. For a man who had built his career on relationships, collaborations, and the perception of unshakable loyalty, the cracks in his network were more than just a PR headache. They were a glaring signal that even those closest to him were beginning to question how much longer they could afford to be in his orbit.
So yesterday, Monday, Diddy celebrated his 55th birthday, but this year was a lot different. It was no Diddy parties. It was none of that. None of that stuff. Well, happily so, I guess, right now. But anyway, so this is his first birthday behind bars.
Diddy, for his part, was reportedly furious. Sources close to the music mogul described him as feeling betrayed, blindsided by the very people he had once counted on. In private conversations, he allegedly lashed out at former allies, accusing them of abandoning him when he needed them most. The irony wasn't lost on those who had been privy to his behavior over the years. This was a man who had built his empire on control, who had orchestrated every detail of his public and private life with the precision of a maestro. And yet, in the face of mounting allegations and public scrutiny, that control was slipping through his fingers. The fallout extended beyond personal relationships. Industry insiders began speculating about the ripple effects on Diddy's business ventures. His once dominant music label, which had already been struggling to stay relevant in an era of streaming and independent artists, now faced an uncertain future. Endorsement deals and partnerships, many of which had been the backbone of his financial empire, were reportedly being reevaluated by corporate executives wary of the growing controversy. Even his philanthropic efforts, which had long been a cornerstone of his public image, were now being scrutinized through a lens of skepticism. Was it all just a smokescreen, a way to distract from the darker aspects of his personal and professional life? The questions were piling up, and the answers were nowhere to be found.
Now, to the latest on the arrest of Sean Diddy Combs. This one has so many people talking. The disgraced music mogul facing federal racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking charges. Both the prosecution and defense teams are set to discuss the next phase of action following the indictment as investigators work to determine potential co-conspirators. But how exactly did we get here?
And then there was the matter of the celebrities who had publicly aligned themselves with Diddy in the past. For years, his parties had been the stuff of legend, attended by everyone from A-list actors to Grammy-winning artists. But now those same parties were being re-examined in the context of the allegations against him. Rumors began circulating about what really went on behind the velvet ropes, with some attendees reportedly coming forward to share stories that painted a far less glamorous picture. The narrative was shifting, and as it did, it became increasingly clear that this wasn't just about Diddy, it was about the entire ecosystem that had enabled him for so long. As the legal case continued to falter, the twins' determination to seek justice for their mother only grew stronger. Their move to Kimora Lee Simmons' home had initially been met with skepticism from some quarters, but as more details about their father's alleged behavior came to light, their decision began to make more sense. According to those close to the family, the twins were working closely with legal advisors and other confidants to ensure that their mother's story didn't get lost in the noise. They were reportedly compiling evidence, reaching out to potential witnesses, and even considering the possibility of speaking out publicly. For two young women who had spent most of their lives in the shadow of their father's fame, it was a bold and defiant act of agency.
But that's Kim's story. That's Kim's book. That's Kim's book. Then you hear about the fact that he broke Kim's nose on a yacht?
Wow, I ain't hear about that.
But the road ahead was far from clear. With the case against Diddy under scrutiny and his legal team pulling out all the stops to discredit the allegations, the twins faced an uphill battle. And yet, their resolve remained unshaken. They had seen firsthand the toll that secrecy and silence had taken on their family, and they were determined not to let history repeat itself. Kimora, ever the protective figure, was reportedly doing everything in her power to support them, even as she faced her own share of criticism for taking such a public stance. And still, the questions lingered. How much did those closest to Diddy really know about his alleged behavior? Were his celebrity friends complicit, or were they simply turning a blind eye to protect their own interests? And perhaps most importantly, what would it take for the truth to finally come to light? As the twins prepared to take their next steps, one thing was certain. The story was far from over, and the fallout was just beginning.
Person that really put their hands on women really is men who have feminine traits. So, it really takes a coward to put his hands on a woman. So, a man is so strong enough, we can just walk away. You can do, it's so many different things that you can do other than get upset, put your hands on a woman. But that comes from a man who's not quite a grown man.
So what do you think, folks? Is this the beginning of the end for Diddy's empire, or will he find a way to claw his way back from the brink? And what about the twins? Are they brave truth seekers or simply pawns in a much larger game? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, stay tuned, because this story is only getting started. See you in the next one.